The old house creaked like it remembered everything, even the things everyone else had tried to forget. Dust hung in the sunlight like ghosts of the past, and as she turned the old brass key, the smell of time hit her first. A mix of cedar, paper, and faint perfume that hadn't been worn in years. That was the day she discovered the truth, and that was the day everything she thought she knew about her family began to crumble. Welcome, beloved. If this is your first time here, I'm Amara, and I'm glad you're here. Truly. Because tonight's story isn't just about an old house or lost inheritance. It's about what happens when truth hides behind love, when family becomes the first place you have to heal from. So stay with me till the end, because by the time we finish, you'll understand that sometimes the things that break us most deeply are also the ones that finally set us free. And before we dive in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing our Unbroken Courage family spread across the world. Every country, every heart, every story connected right here. Her name was Elaine. She was soft-spoken, with hands that trembled when she first told me about the house. It wasn't supposed to be mine, she said, eyes distant. But it became mine by accident, or maybe by destiny. Her parents had passed away a year apart. Her father first, quiet, gentle, a man who believed in hard work and handwritten notes. Her mother, strong, proud, and as Elaine said, the type who could hide an earthquake with a smile. When the will was read, Elaine was shocked. The house, their childhood home, was left to her. Not shared among the siblings, not sold, not gifted away, just hers. She remembered how her older brother Gerald stared at her across the lawyer's table with eyes that burned holes through her skin. "It's not fair," he'd said. "You were never even around." And her sister Margaret had cried, not out of grief, but rage. You always were her favorite. Elaine didn't argue. She never did. She just signed the papers quietly, collected the old keys, and walked out of that office with her heart pounding in confusion. For months, she didn't touch the house. She couldn't. There were too many memories, too many ghosts walking those hallways. But after the anniversary of her mother's passing, something in her spirit nudged her. "Go back," it whispered. So one Saturday morning, she packed gloves, cleaning supplies, and courage, and drove 2 hours back to the neighborhood she once called home. The moment she opened the door, the air felt heavy. Not evil, just heavy, like the house had been holding its breath, waiting for her. Every creak, every shadow carried a memory. Her father's chair by the fireplace. Her mother's sewing kit still half open on the coffee table. A pair of spectacles resting where no one had touched them in years. She moved slowly through the rooms, whispering to herself, "It's just a house, Elaine, just a house." But she knew better. In the master bedroom, she began to clean the old wardrobe, the one her mother had always kept locked. The key still hung on a faded ribbon from a nail above the doorframe. When she opened it, something small and metallic fell out, a silver locket. Inside was a faded photo of her mother and someone else, a man who wasn't her father. Elaine froze. The picture was old, but the handwriting on the back was clear. "To my dearest Rose, always yours. L." Rose, her mother's name. L? Who was L? Her heart pounded as questions began racing through her head. Was this before her father? During? Why was this hidden in the wardrobe? She sat on the edge of the bed, locket trembling in her hand, trying to make sense of the story she never knew she was part of. Then she saw something else, a seam in the wallpaper near the wardrobe, faint but out of place. She pulled at it gently and the paper came loose. Behind it, a small wooden panel, nailed shut. She found a screwdriver in the old toolbox and pried it open. Inside the hidden compartment was a tin box. She opened it carefully, half afraid of what she might find. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Rose, postmarked from a small town called Wellington Creek, dated nearly 40 years ago. Every one of them was signed by the same hand, "With all my love, L." Elaine sat there for hours, reading them one by one. They spoke of longing, separation, promises of running away together, dreams never fulfilled. The tone changed over time. Love turned into sorrow, and sorrow turned into silence. The last letter simply said, "If you ever decide to tell her, she deserves the truth." Her. Who was her? The letters ended the year before Elaine was born. Her chest tightened as realization began to sink in. Could it be? It couldn't. But as she read her mother's reply, a single unsent letter tucked at the bottom of the box, everything inside her broke. "Dear Elle, I wish I had the courage to tell Elaine who you really are. She looks like you more every day." Elaine dropped the paper. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes blurred. All her life she'd been told she looked like her father, her late father who loved her dearly. But now she knew why her siblings always teased her about being different. She wasn't just the youngest, she was the secret. "I didn't know whether to scream or cry," she told me, tears glistening in her eyes. "I felt like my whole existence was a lie wrapped in silence." She stayed in that room till midnight, rereading everything. The house around her moaned as if mourning too. And in the faint light of her phone's flashlight, she noticed one more thing: a small envelope taped under the bed frame. Inside it, she found something that changed the course of everything. Not just her understanding of her family, but the inheritance itself. It was a document. An addendum to her mother's will, written in her mother's handwriting, but never filed officially. It read, "If Elaine ever finds this, she must know. She is not to sell the house. It holds the truth of who we are, and when she's ready, she'll know what to do." Elaine sat frozen. Why did her mother leave this house only to her? Why hide all this instead of speaking it? And most of all, why did her siblings seem so desperate to get rid of it? The next day, she decided to confront them. Gerald and Margaret arrived with cold smiles, pretending kindness, but radiating greed. Gerald said, "We heard you're cleaning the place up. Maybe it's time to sell?" She looked at him. "I'm not selling." His jaw tightened. Margaret crossed her arms. "You don't even live here, Elaine. You don't understand how much this house is worth." Elaine took a deep breath. "I know exactly how much it's worth, but what it holds is worth even more." They didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. But they would. That night, Elaine went back into the master bedroom and pulled out the letters again. She spread them across the bed, matching dates, names, handwriting. She started researching Wellington Creek, the town in the postmarks, and what she found confirmed her mother's greatest secret. Elle was Lawrence, a man who lived in that town, a painter, once close to her mother before she met her father. He never married. He died years ago, and the archives listed one detail that made Elaine's heart stop. Lawrence had one child, a daughter named Elaine Rose. She realized then, her mother never truly hid her past. She just left it waiting to be found in time. By the time Elaine finished her story that night, she looked exhausted but lighter. She said, "I thought I was cursed to live under other people's shadows, but maybe my mother gave me this house not to haunt me, but to heal me." I asked her what she planned to do with it now. She smiled faintly. "I'm going to restore it, every wall, every room, every truth, because I was born in secrets, but I refused to die in silence." But, beloved, the story doesn't end there. Because 1 week later, when Elaine returned to the house to begin renovations, what she found hidden under the floorboards would unravel everything again. When Elaine returned to the house the following week, the rain had just stopped. The earth outside was damp and quiet, and the smell of wet soil clung to the air. She stood for a moment on the porch, hand resting on the doorknob, feeling the familiar tremor of both fear and curiosity. Inside, the house greeted her with that same uneasy stillness, but this time she wasn't afraid of it. She felt as though her mother's spirit lingered, not haunting, but guiding. She began to clean again, determined to start restoring the house like she'd promised herself. But as she swept the old hardwood floor in the study, the broom hit a hollow sound. Tap, tap, thud. She stopped. Kneeling, she ran her hand across the floorboards until she found a loose plank. Something was underneath. Her heart started racing. She fetched a small crowbar and pried the board open carefully. Inside, wrapped in layers of cloth, was a small, heavy box. Black metal, rusted at the edges, sealed with an old lock. She sat on the floor, staring at it. Every instinct told her that whatever was inside was never meant to stay hidden forever. The lock was easy to break. Time had already done half the job. Inside, she found stacks of envelopes, neatly tied with ribbon, and at the very bottom, a thick manila folder marked Property Documents, Confidential. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were deeds, contracts, and receipts. all related to the house and other properties she never knew existed. But what caught her attention most was a handwritten note from her mother. "To my children, if these documents are ever found, know this: the truth was never about money. It was about legacy. Gerald, Margaret, you know what you did. Elaine, forgive me for my silence. The house is yours because you never asked for it. The others lost their way to greed." Elaine felt her throat tighten. At the bottom of the folder was a notarized document, one that had never been submitted. It stated that her father, in his last amendment to his will, had left half of his savings and a second small property to Elaine directly, separate from the family estate. But those documents were never filed. Someone had intercepted them. She dug deeper, and there it was, a receipt, a legal acknowledgement with her brother's signature on it. Dated 2 months after her father's passing, he had taken the paperwork from the lawyer's office under the pretense of reviewing family assets. In other words, he'd stolen her inheritance. For a long moment, Elaine sat in silence, staring at the evidence in her lap. The pieces fit too perfectly now. The bitterness at the will reading, the desperate push to sell the house, the anger that she'd been the one chosen. Her mother must have known the truth. Must have discovered it too late. That's why she hid everything. That's why she left the house only to Elaine. By the next morning, Elaine knew what she had to do. She made copies of every document, placed them in a folder, and drove to her brother's home. Gerald's wife opened the door, surprised. He appeared a moment later, expression turning from shock to annoyance. "Elaine, what are you doing here?" She held out the folder. "You stole from me, Gerald." He froze. "What are you talking about?" "The house papers. The inheritance. You took the documents from Dad's lawyer and hid them. You let everyone believe I only had this old house because you wanted everything else for yourself." His face turned pale. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" she asked quietly, opening the folder and laying the receipts on the table. "Because your signature says otherwise." His wife covered her mouth, stunned. Gerald stammered. "Where did you find that?" "Under the floorboards," Elaine said. "The house kept your secret better than you did." Then she turned to leave but paused at the door. "You always said Mom loved me more. Maybe she did. But not because I was her favorite, because I never betrayed her." And with that, she walked away. The next few days were a blur of calls, lawyers, and reluctant apologies. Gerald tried to downplay his actions, claiming confusion, a mistake, but the evidence spoke louder than his words. Margaret stayed quiet, torn between guilt and fear of losing her share of the estate. In the end, both siblings agreed to a legal settlement, giving Elaine everything that had been originally intended for her. But the victory didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like truth, raw, bitter, necessary. Elaine told me later, "I thought I'd feel powerful when I proved them wrong, but all I felt was free." She didn't sell the house. Instead, she restored it, slowly, room by room, paint by paint. She filled it not with furniture, but with peace. One day, while cleaning the front porch, she noticed an old photograph frame tucked behind the radiator. Inside it was a family portrait she'd never seen before. Her mother, father, her siblings, and her as a baby. Behind it, written faintly in pencil, were the words, "To my daughter Elaine, the secret I'm proud of." That was when she stopped crying. She realized that her mother hadn't been hiding shame. She'd been protecting love. Imperfect, complicated, but real. When she finished her story, the room was silent. She looked at me and said, "Amara, I thought truth would destroy me. But now I see. It built me." I smiled at her. Truth always rebuilds, even when it tears first. Beloved, maybe you've carried secrets you didn't ask for. Family wounds that never healed because no one ever spoke about them. Maybe, like Elaine, you've been blamed for things you never caused, or punished for simply existing. But I want you to remember this. The truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand. One day, what's hidden will come to light, not to shame you, but to free you. So if this story touched you, type in the comments, "The truth will set me free," and share this with someone who's been carrying silence too long. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of courage, redemption, and divine justice. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and stay unbroken.